Hi everyone, and welcome to this fortnight's episode of Backchat. I'm Amy, this is my partner Maggie,
Hello.
and together we are ThinkerThemer, and we are well on our way now with campaigns for 2022. So we're back to doing our top 10 format because there were much more campaigns that launched in the last couple of weeks. And as usual, we will be ranking them based on our individual assessments on how excited we are about the campaign, about the game, and how much we want to get our hands on these games in the next year or two. So, without further ado, let's get started. But there are a couple of mentions that I want, a couple of campaigns I wanted to talk about first.
Not within the top 10.
Not within the top 10.
Okay.
The first one is not a board game at all, but it is the boardgametable.com, tables.com, boardgametables.com. Their new bags and playmats campaign, because if you watch the channel, you've been watching it for a while, you may have heard us mention these bags before. We have two of their game bags that we use a lot. And what was actually really hilarious is they launched this new Kickstarter campaign and we were scrolling down and then we saw ourselves quoted.
Yeah. It's like, it's like, oh, that's a good quote. Oh, that's us.
Oh, that's us.
That's us.
And the quote was something along the lines of, we use these bags every week. And that was taken from a previous episode of Backchat. But we do. We actually use these bags
all the
every
time.
week.
Yeah.
All the time.
Whenever we're traveling, we even took them to Christmas, to a holiday.
Did. Yeah, so we actually put one on a plane, but we did that carefully. We wrapped everything in bubble wrap, then put it in the bag, then put it in check-in luggage. But it did work beautifully. And so we're big advocates of these bags. Obviously, we love them. And so now they've launched new colours of these bags. I like our colour. We have grey with a bit of orange trim, but I do like the new black one because, you know, I'm always in black.
This one's that they actually look, and I don't know if that's actually going to be the case, but they look thicker. Like the actual makeup of them is thicker, and it looks.
Oh, I'm not sure that they changed.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
It looked kind of more robust to me. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe it's just the design makes it look like that.
And they have the smaller bags as well, but we always tend to fill the big bags
every time. Yeah.
And you know, they fit in our car nicely, and anyway, good to travel with. But I was even more excited about the mats actually, because it's really hard to get good neoprene mats here in Australia.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we have a couple, but I've also bought their mats for friends as gifts because they're really easy to get in the big size. But before they only had the blue, or recently they've only had blue, and now they've got all these colours. I have my eye on a grey or burgundy mats.
The burgundy's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's, of course, I'm like grey and you'll be all like
colour.
burgundy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure if we need another mat. We do have a couple. We always have them lying around. Anyway, I feel like we're going way off.
Yeah,
but anyway, check it out if you need a bag or a mat, because there's lots of colours and options available. And I know that they made a mat that's smaller to suit the portable tables or the fold-out tables as well. So that's pretty clever. Yeah. So that's one campaign. The other campaign is going to be the elephant in the room as a campaign that is not in our top 10.
Yes.
And that is Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game, which has, I think it's made over 5 million Australian dollars.
Close to 6 million Australian dollars so far. Which is outrageous.
And it's still got a lot of time to go.
Yeah.
And so this game, if you're a fan of the Zombicide series, is kind of based on that, but it now includes the Marvel characters. And in the campaign itself, there's two different games. One where you play as the zombies.
Well, the Marvel characters infected with the zombie virus.
Yes, although there are some characters that are unaffected as well, which you're
going to be then fighting against.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the other game is playing as the original Marvel
unaffected Marvel characters
who are fighting the zombies.
Yeah.
So there's those two different perspectives in two different games.
Yeah.
And then there is a giant, what is it called?
Ginormous.
The giant Galactus. So you may have seen this featured in some content creators content. It is ridiculous.
Ridiculously big.
It is ridiculous. In fact, it may be one of the most outrageous add-ons I have ever seen in a campaign. It's like this giant Galactus that is an expansion in and of itself, but it doesn't do much.
Doesn't seem to do much.
Doesn't seem to do much.
It holds things on.
It holds a character, I believe.
Yeah.
And it comes with some other like cards and things. But
yeah.
it's $180.
I mean, this feels like, again, I'm not a collector, and so I, no judgment here, but I feel like the only way that I could possibly justify this is like, when you walk into a mansion and in the middle you have like a statue of like someone, if that's going to be this
statue
in your house,
in your games room,
and arriving to your house, like as soon as you arrive,
not,
you open the door,
big.
and well, it's pretty big for.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like statue in the middle of your house.
It's a gaming statue.
But it is a gaming statue. I think you have to really be into the IP. So if you're into the IP and and that seems like a good investment, that's fine. But as an expansion for a game, outrageous. And I do, like, there's a lot of these big campaigns, and Zombicide is one that I know has had lots and lots of games, and there's lots of collectors of all of those games. I kind of wish the 2 games were in one. I didn't see the point of like the 2 modes. I know that it comes with a truck ton of minis and all of that, but and anyway, a big campaign, lots of people are excited about it. It's also cooperative, not our thing. We're not hugely into the IP anyway, but just thought I'd cover that off before I get we get all the comments.
Move on.
No, but going, all the comments. What about
Marvel?
Did you miss Marvel Zombies? No, we didn't miss Marvel Zombies.
I mean, how could you miss it?
Yeah,
it's huge.
Okay, so let's get into our top 10.
All right.
Now, our number 10 for the fortnight is a game called Temerity. And Temerity is a little card game. It's just a deck of cards, and it's 2 players only. And this is a really interesting card game where you're trying to anticipate what your opponent is going to do. You're also trying to play very tactically. And the way that it works is there are 3 different suits of cards. There are fairies, spirits, and warlocks. Thank you. And those 3 different suits of cards are going to do different actions when you play them. But the trick to it is that you can either play those cards face up or face down, and that can change the way that they work. So if you play them face down, you're actually banking them for later to be activated at a later stage, and they can have disruptive powers where they're going to make you steal an opponent's cards or discard all of their cards. But what you're ultimately trying to achieve is to deal the single biggest attack on your opponent points wise. So you're trying to build up to this one like almighty blow.
Yeah, what is it? Show-stopping. Yeah.
Attack.
Yeah.
And the way that you're going to be doing that is playing cards face up down in front of you, mostly through the fairies. So the fairies are going to be dealing damage, and the spirits enable you to multiply out that damage. And so what you're trying to do is kind of build this tableau of attack strength. But the issue is that those hidden cards can sometimes flip the game up and mean that instead of dealing damage, you're taking the damage. And so there's all these ways that you can kind of counteract each other's moves. And I just thought it seemed like a really simple game, but quite interesting in that all the suits have 2 different modes.
Right.
And it didn't seem like it would be difficult to teach or pick up. So just a kind of quick little 10 to 20 minute game. This game is actually available print and play. So even though it's probably a little too expensive for me to justify kind of backing and then paying for shipping to Australia, the print and play is like $10 Australian. So, might be. You've been recently doing a bit of dabbling in print and play.
I never feel like I have enough time to do it justice. I think with this game, this is definitely more your style because it's very like player versus player, head to head. I don't tend to enjoy exactly what this is, which is like trying to get into your opponent's head and then go, aha, I kind of bested you. I don't like, that's just in terms of my personal preference of playing. I don't enjoy that.
And you don't like your plans being disruptive in general in games. And this is all about disrupting.
This is like, that is the game.
That is the game.
Yeah. So this is not something that I would be playing with you. Again, like I would try it once.
But would you print it for me if you're not going to play it with me?
For you.
You just do the print part and I'll find someone else to play with. Yeah. And it is like quite abstract. There are characters assigned to these cards, but really you've just got a bunch of actions.
I didn't realize though that the difference between fairies and fairies, like the spelling is different. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And so fairies spelled with an F-A-E, they're actually like the mischievous, evil, or dangerous version. So again, we're not big on fantasy.
No.
So I had no idea. And I was like, oh, this seems weird that there's these weird sounding or weird spelled fairies, and it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Every other gamer watching,
everyone is like, well, duh, yeah,
of course,
yeah. But this is the bar.
This is what happens when you're just in Euroland all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that is our number 10, Temerity.
Our number 9 is a game called Hike. So in Hike, we're playing as mushers, who are the sled drivers. And we're going to be trying to put together a team, or the best sort of team of huskies, to pull the sled through the snow and eventually kind of win. Or is it win the race? Or like reach the destination, win against our competitors? Yes.
Yeah. So the race takes place actually in the center of all of the players, and it's built at the beginning via a series of cards. But what you're really trying to do is build up your sled full of huskies, which is kind of a little bit of a puzzle, in that the way that you're playing them down into your, like, I guess, set or tableau or grid style sled, is that you need to align the colors so that they match up. But each of the...
Because they need to, like, apparently they can have... Not all of them get along with one another. So you want to have the right neighbors next to one another.
I just see the puzzle. And it's like different colors lining up next to each other.
Yeah, fair.
And each of the huskies actually has different, I believe thematically, it's different terrain that they can go through with ease. And so when you're flipping over, ultimately, when you're flipped over the race cards, it's going to say the type of step that you need to take, and therefore you're allocating each of your huskies to a step in the race to move through and eventually, well, try and win the race. But for me, the puzzle here is a little bit, I feel would be a little bit too simple for our taste. I didn't feel like it was going to be super crunchy, probably more of a gateway level gaming, and just competitive racing of animals is not my favorite theme. Yeah. So for me, this is probably not one that we would back. But you know, if other people might enjoy this theme or have more familiarity with this kind of context.
This is obviously like, you know, coming from South America and then in Australia, like dog or husky sledding is not something that I have any context of.
No.
I know that there and in the campaign they acknowledge that if you look it up, if you Google it, like you'll see a lot of the kind of controversy around it, because there is, just like any sort of animal-led sport, there's a lot of horrible things that can happen in the process in terms of the treatment of the animals. So the game designers have tried to kind of make some comments around, you know, it's about, you know, making sure that you have a good kind of caring relationship. They do have a mention of one of the unlocked goals is that there's a proportion of the profits that's going to go to a dog well-being or wellness charity. But I kind of wish that for a topic that could be so sensitive, I kind of wish that they had more information around it.
I wish there was more information on it as well. But ultimately, I feel like this game is not for us for the gameplay. When I looked at the gameplay, there's not enough probably. Yeah, it's not heavy enough for us. So that is our number 9, Hike. Our number 8 is a game called Yucatan, and this game is the next in the series-ish of Kemet, which is a game that we've actually never played.
No, not yet.
But it does look like one of those kind of, you know, dudes on the map with a bit of area control, territory control, and battling. And this game is that, but what I thought was really interesting about this game is it's the same designer, but he approached this Yucatan game very differently, in that he wanted to create a game that had positive aggression in it. And what that means is he was thinking about the fact that when you play these kinds of games, it's upsetting when someone you know, kind of takes you out or attacks you and you lose people
you lose
on
the battle.
You lose the battle.
With nothing.
And how unfair that can be if you feel like you're not the person winning the game, and so why did you attack me, and all of that. And so he wanted to develop a game that meant that it wouldn't matter if that you were attacked, because you would get something positive out of it, or in fact that you would encourage being attacked because you're going to get something positive out of it. So that's kind of an interesting concept for the game. The game takes place on a less complicated board than some of the other games, because it's this round board, and it looks like it only has really 3 main areas where you'll be sending your workers, armies out into, and then you can summon different monsters that I guess can kind of help you on your with everything that you're trying to get done. And then what's borrowed from Kemet, my understanding, is the way that the cards are played in the battle, that you start with very few cards. Those cards get used up and you're trying to draft new cards to help you with each battle. I kind of like the player board element in that the board is circular, but then the player boards have this like crescent kind of top that means that they slot in nicely with the board. I like that.
Yeah.
And I also always really like a game that has things that you can upgrade on your player board as well. But I guess with this game, I was most excited when I heard it was coming because it's called Yucatan, which makes, of course, we think of that area in Mexico and the Mayan culture. And so I was excited to hear more about that. I'm not sure how closely tied it is to that culture. It's definitely taking elements from that culture. There were people who were questioning the designer about having a cultural consultant, and the designer said more would be revealed during the campaign. I couldn't find any evidence of that in the campaign so far.
There's nothing really now on the campaign as it stands.
No, there's not. And the designer has released the design notes, which were quite interesting to read through, but the only time it's mentioned in there was just, this isn't historically accurate, it's fantasy world. And I am actually, like, I want the industry to do better on that. I don't think that's a good enough reason to take a culture and a people and kind of apply what you think is their rituals and things without having some kind of consultant if you're not from there or an expert. I wish that had been done differently. And honestly, it does kind of cast a little bit of a kind of it makes me less interested in the game. The other element, of course, is the theme itself, because what are you trying to do in this game? You're trying to kill prisoners.
Well, yeah, you're trying to, in order to to safeguard your people from the gods, you need to capture prisoners to then offer them as sacrifice, which is kind of, it's not something that I would enjoy stepping into that world and be like, I'm gonna go and grab me some prisoners so then I can sacrifice. It's just not something that I enjoy. And yes, suspend your disbelief, it's a game, but it's like, for me, like, a game is an immersive experience that I like to, like, I want to live it. I want to
you're the
feel
themer,
like,
you feel the story.
And it's like, that doesn't feel good to me. Again, personal preference. So for that reason, I'm like, I was more excited before I sort of understood like what you're actually doing. So it was interesting when you're talking about like positive, positive battle?
Aggression,
positive, because it's like, well, positive for who?
Positive for who? You're still killing a lot of prisoners.
You're just sort of like feeling a little bit like getting a consolation prize.
But positive, you get victory points.
And so that's interesting because like it makes me think of like Blood Rage, for example, where it's like the positive element of that is like you still get to go to Valhalla, no matter, like, whoever dies goes to Valhalla. And then if you're playing, obviously that's Viking theme. If you're playing things that are they give you benefits in that afterlife, then you're fine. So that was already, like, that doesn't feel like
there's lots of games that have positive interaction. I think it was just new for this series of games. So I thought that was quite interesting. We won't be backing this one, but is our number 8 Yucatan.
Our number 7 is a game called Final Girl 2. So this is the second series of, I believe they call them feature films. Because they're all kind of based on, all these different modules essentially are based on the classic horror films. The reason it's called Final Girl is because we play as one of several final girls who are going to be defending or trying to kill the killer on the loose at the same time as surviving the night and trying to save as many of the victims in whatever scenario or area as possible. And so one of the things that's interesting about this is that it's solo. So it's a solo game. I'm imagining you could probably play it co-op if you wanted to have like a couple of people, but you're still essentially just playing as the one final girl. The currency, so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing cards. You have different cards that allow you to do things like move or attack or rest, and collect, so do searching to collect items or weapons that then you can use in terms of like better attacks. But then what happens is as you decide what card you're going to use for that, you then have to do a roll of dice to decide, what actually happens. So based on, whether you get 2 hits, 1 hit, or no hits. The interesting thing with this is the tension is you're trying to obviously, save as many of these victims as possible, because that actually is going to help you unlock additional abilities, as well as ultimately if you manage to get a certain number, you have a special unique ability that should be quite kind of powerful. It's kind of like you kind of power up as the final girl. You've got all your destination, like your determination sort of in place. But then the other currency that you're going to be using, spending and banking, and using even as a way to purchase other cards, is time. So anything that you do may cost time, and so that's a really interesting little dial of all these balances between, you know, how are we going in terms of our time, in terms of our hits, and all these sorts of things. They're all meant to be fairly thematically immersive. I think for me, I'm curious and intrigued about the sort of solo experience. We haven't actually played Hostage Negotiator, which apparently is what a lot of the core mechanics are based on. And I think partly is because Hostage Negotiator, from a theme point, wasn't really attracted to it. With this one, Amy's completely out because it's sort of like horror. And
I was reading, well, first of all, it's a solo game, and that kind of, that means it's Maggie territory.
Yeah.
But having a killer on the loose, that is like, I don't watch scary movies.
No.
I don't know, even reading the description on the page, like the hairs were standing up on my arms, and I was just like, no, I want no part of this world. Yeah. So you would definitely be alone playing this. And does that make you scared playing it alone?
Not at all. No, I usually am the type of person that will laugh through a horror film or even like a suspense film. I'll jump, but then I'll just kind of immediately laugh.
No, I don't want to be scared.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also not, even though like I laugh and stuff, it's not one of those themes that I like love putting myself in, because even that whole sense of like the adrenaline and the that cat and mouse, again, like I tend to prefer more like the creative exploring type things. So for that reason, I'm like intrigued about this game, but I probably wouldn't be backing it, because it's something that I think I would play if someone else has a copy and be like, oh yeah, I'll check it out, give it a go, try out some of those core mechanics.
It is meant to be very good. I hear very good things about the solo.
But at the same time, I hear that it can get a bit repetitive in terms of like the mechanics are not like, they're not going to shine through. It's really more about that chasing the killer and that sort of stuff.
So I like some of the elements, the mechanics. I like that when you go to battle the killer, eventually it you add the cards from the location as well, and so that means that there's a bit of variability even if you're going up against the same killer. I thought that was pretty cool, even though I still don't want to do it. I also
for someone else to try.
I really like a couple of elements of the campaign and the game as a package. I really like the vehicle miniatures. They were awesome. The killer miniatures, I can leave those alone, but the vehicles, I really like the vehicles in there. And I also really like the box set and the way that it sits. They've designed it so it fits into a calyx nicely, which is always a plus. But I really like the way that the all of the volumes are shown like on the side, and if you want to, and then the top of the box is a VCR. It's so cute. Cool. I really like that, and I like that they've thought about the shelf presence of the game. I thought that was really cool as well. But to go in on season 1, season 2, and all of the everything, it's around, I think it's $329 US dollars, which is a lot if you haven't gotten in before on this game. But
interestingly, also in this Final Girl 2, a lot of the locations and the kind of theme or flavor of them are more fantasy based. I actually think I would prefer the ones from the first series, because they're more like the sort of the camp at night, or like that sort of the location. Like it's more like Killer on the Loose.
Your home when you're sleeping.
I think like there's like a home invasion or something of like like I'm out
on this.
Whereas this one's more like, I think this season there's more like aliens and monsters.
Oh, you're talking. I'm just trying to wrap it up. All right, you're like, no, stop talking about the themes.
Happy things.
That is our number 7, Final Girl 2. Our number 6 is a series of expansions for the Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Gates of Gold and Keeper of Keys.
Well done.
Yes. So these 2 expansions bring more elements to the Viscounts game. However, we have not played Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and it is a glaring gap in our game experience. I feel like because this is such a popular gaming series, I always feel like someone is going to have it and be willing to teach us, because you go, lots of people have
We
it. Lots of
need
people
more
love
friends
it.
is the takeaway from.
So we should
from
stop
this tale.
relying on having friends that have games.
We just need to make more friends.
We do need to make more friends.
More board gaming friends.
If anyone's out there and wants to teach us Viscounts.
Yes.
But anyway, it is higher up in our list, even though we don't have the game, because we do enjoy the series. We really love Architects. Paladins is a game that I love less than Architects, because if you know my gaming preference, it's a bit too multiplayer solitaire for me.
Which means that I'm fine with it.
Yeah, exactly. But I am very interested to try Viscounts because it has the rondelle. But it's very hard to work out what's happening in an expansion when you haven't played the base game. But I did my best to try and interpret. And it did feel like, to me, it was, I think, Keeper of Keys was the more interesting expansion for me. I feel like if you love this game, you're going to end up getting both, and the collector's edition box, which is available with this campaign, so check that out. But the Keeper of Keys brought in stronger tableau building effects, so it gives you like the ability to add these additional powers, the chest to the bottom of your tableau, which means that the cards that you place there are even more powerful
as well.
The new board to fit them in. So it felt like that expansion had a bit more substance, whereas the other expansion, Gates of Gold, was more like little bits of everything, more cards, which is probably really good if you play the game a lot and you are looking for some variability. But I do like, in general, the way that Garfield Games does do their campaigns, because they are like anti-FOMO. The prices are pretty much, they're good value, but they're not too dissimilar to what you can get in retail. And so for that reason, I don't feel like I necessarily need to run out and get the expansions before I've played the base game. So I feel very like they're enabling me to be responsible.
To like, don't worry, you're not going to miss out.
You're not going to miss out.
Don't panic. There's no bonuses, extras. And they even say, we're fine with that. Like, don't feel guilty that you're not backing the campaign at the campaign level. But I think, again, because we haven't played the base, it's hard to know. Essentially, it's bringing in new ways of scoring points. I was thinking when I read The Keeper of Keys, it's like, well, the Keeper of Keys, in your opinion, like in your world, would be just like a Maggie that you get to go, babe, have you seen my keys?
Have you seen my keys?
And then you just hear this voice going, yeah, they're on this like on this table, or they're on next to this. Yeah.
And literally every other item
in my life. I feel like that's your Keeper of Keys.
I know, you're
expansion.
you're the Keeper of Things.
Yeah.
Like the Keeper of all things. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, maybe it's just one of those memories where it's just like, oh yeah, you left that somewhere.
It's because I've got one of those like when you see something and your mind takes a snapshot of that, and usually the thing that'll trigger it is that's a weird place for that to be. I'm just going, isn't that interesting? Sometimes I will put it where it belongs, and sometimes I just make the mental note of like, that shouldn't be
Amy's
there.
going to be looking for that at some moment.
And
there's Amy's credit card. Oh, there's Amy's sunglasses.
It's in this very obscure spot. So
it is a bit like that.
Yes.
Anyway, back to the game. So it is our number 6 because we anticipate that people are going to like it, and we'll probably like it. But at the moment, we can't comment too much on our expectations around the gameplay. So that is our number 6, the Viscounts of the West Kingdom expansions.
Our number 5 is a game called White Hat, which is referring to white hat hackers, which are the good version of a hacker. So not the black hat hacker, who's the one that's trying to look for a vulnerability to exploit it. The white hat version is the one who's looking for a vulnerability to patch it or to alert that, this is an issue. And so we're going to be playing as these, white hat hackers. That's like a mouthful to white hat hackers.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be navigating our way through different locations, and eventually what we're trying to reach is a critical asset, which I believe is just like a ultimate.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know if it's actually going to come across in the gameplay, because it's looking like it's more about numbers ultimately.
Well, it is a trick-taking game, and actually it's a follow-up to a game by the same designer called Black Hat. So now this is the White Hat version, and interestingly, for a trick-taking game, this game has a central board, and the board is going to dictate your scoring, which is really interesting because when you win a trick, you are going to be moving along this board and then landing on different positions of the board, and you can leapfrog other players as well. And where you land is going to determine how many points you're going to score. And in this game, you're trying to keep your score as low as possible, which means sometimes it is not advantageous to win a trick because it's going to land you on a spot that it is not where you want to be, because you're going to leapfrog all these people and land on a spot that has lots of points, which is counter to what you're trying to achieve. There's also spots on the game board as well where you can lock in. So there might be one that is like -1 or 0, or these really valuable spots that are actually going to keep your score nice and low. And so you want to try and race and lock into those spots. So there's a lot going on the player board that's going to dictate a bit of the scoring. But the gameplay is quite interesting too, because in this game there are no suits. You are only looking at the value of the card. And so when you play the cards down and someone leads a trick, you are looking to have the person who has the highest scoring card is going to win the trick. Unless there's been a white hat card played, which disrupts the scoring a little bit and mixes it up. But one thing that I really find fascinating about this game as well is that you can play pairs of cards. So if I am leading the trick and I play with a pair of cards, then only pair of cards are going to be considered in terms of who is able to win the trick. If you play a single card, you are automatically kind of out of the running to win that trick. So there's a lot going on there, and then it starts to get even more complicated. There are other things on the cards. The way that the white hat card thing kind of works, I have to admit, I got 3/4 the way through like the rules teach, and I felt as though I was really in on the game. Then it started to add a little bit too much complexity. And then I was starting to like fall out of the game myself, because, you know, with these games, this trick-taking game, I think ideally it would play a larger number of players. So I don't feel like it would work very well at 2. It's probably best at 3 or 4. But what's interesting about that is, like, obviously you've got to teach people, and the more complexity, trick taking in and of itself takes a bit to wrap your head around. And then you've got the player board, which is creating this really interesting scoring system. And then it's like, and then a couple of the rules were like unnecessarily complicated, I felt. It was a little too much. But interestingly, did you know this game has a solo mode? So I think that's fascinating. It's a trick-taking game with a solo mode. I feel like that's pretty unusual.
It is quite unusual. I don't know how excited I am to like...
You like trick-taking though, but you're not interested to play it alone. That's interesting.
Well, because one of the things that I struggle with is like facilitating an AI or facilitating someone else's kind of turn.
And fun fact, I believe you play as all 4 characters.
No. My brain does not work like that.
No, okay.
My mom actually loves to play like 4-handed rummy, and I'm like, she won't play anything else, like she won't like humor or entertain any other games, but then she'll play that.
Wow.
4-handed. I did not inherit that gene.
But you did inherit the like playing by yourself. Playing by yourself.
The solitaire part and the playing part, yes. The being able to track all those things, no.
Yeah, so this is a game that, like, we both gave it a 6. I'm intrigued by it. I do enjoy trick-taking, but probably won't be backing this one. But an interesting concept nonetheless. That is our number 5 white hats.
Our number 4 is a game called Collab, where we play as mad scientists doing what mad scientists do, while ultimately trying to get the most fame and renown. But the way we're going to do that is by sending out our minions to help us collect resources, create potions, create, crazy contraptions and magical creatures and that sort of stuff.
And that sort of stuff.
And that kind of general mad scientist-y sort of
and
day
the way
in
you're
the life.
The day in the life of a mad scientist. The way that you're going to be doing this is using worker placement, actually dice worker placement, because you're going to have these minions that have a dice inserted into their head, and then they get placed out on the board, and the dice value interacts with their worker action spots that are available to you and to your opponents. Because the most interesting thing I think about this game is that every turn you're going to be putting out minions and bringing them back or returning them back to your supply. And when you put them out onto the board, you're not only affecting the actions that you can take with your worker placement, but also the actions that other people around you can take as well. And so that creates like an interesting interaction between you and your opponents, in that you could be removing something that is valuable to someone else because you've decided, no, hang on a second, I'm going to bring that minion back because I don't need it there anymore, and you do, and so I'm going to bring it back. Or you could, kind of you're changing the game board state. And I just think that is like really interesting. And if your opponent puts something out that's really appealing, then maybe I'm going to like change the order I was going to do things. And I really like games that kind of keep you guessing and keep you nimble with your strategy. Even though you've got a strategy going in, you have to kind of shift it up.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I did not expect you to say that.
But you do know that that's true.
I do know that you get very hyper focused on one strategy, and so
I just want to do this thing.
Yeah. And it's so you don't seem frustrated at it, but you do seem frustrated when you don't win because everybody else is adjusting, and you're just like no.
I don't want to adjust. I just want to do my thing. Yeah.
And the other part of this game is that there's a lot of card play, and that you're building out a tableau of cards as well, and something about the adjacencies gives you
so they trigger.
Cards,
so I believe the cards will trigger all the adjacent cards. So you want to be planning that quite well, which I think is going to come down to like thematically the contraption that you're building, and how as soon as you activate something, then the thing next to it, like something happens to it.
And this game was originally on Kickstarter and was cancelled, and this is the relaunch. And the first time around, it didn't really catch our eye. And usually we don't cover relaunches normally, but this time we did give it a closer look, and I was intrigued to read a little bit more about the designers, in that one of the designers designed Dinosaur Island and many other games. And then the other designer actually designed Palm Island, which is a game that you really like. Yeah. And part of this campaign is another version of Palm Island called Palm Laboratory. So you can add that in for $6, and it's a twist on the Palm Island game. I thought that was really cool, and that you would be into that.
And I'm more into the island theme because I'm like big into islands. But I am curious to see what they do with this, the twist, and some kind of, because it sounds like it's like a level up or a next step to the core mechanic of Palm Island, which I actually really, really enjoy. Like, it's so clever, so simple. Everything in the palm of your hand, all those resource management things. I love that.
Yeah, so in terms of collab and whether we're backing it, we're not backing it. It is a game that I would like to play. I'd sit down at a con and happily learn it because the mechanics interest me. But in terms of how, like in the campaign, I found it a little bit hard to think about how the tableau and the worker placement and everything kind of comes together. And because the thematic umbrella is not that strong, or I didn't feel like it was like hugely thematic as a game. I don't know. It's like, yes, there's a context, like you're a mad scientist, but in terms of what you're doing, it didn't feel particularly thematic to me.
Yeah, but I guess I again having not played it yet, it's sometimes hard to tell. But it does look like you're kind of moving around, placing your dice. It could potentially be anything, but
it could be anything, I think. Anyway, so that is a collab. It is quite well priced, I must say. I thought $40 for the retail edition US and $60 for the deluxe edition, where you get the miniatures and you get some fancy dice. Is not too bad in these days of Kickstarters. Nice. So check that out. That is our number 4 collab. Our number 3 is a cooperative game.
What?
Yeah. Number 3 is a cooperative game. I'm really excited about it.
What?
Our number 3 is a game called Sink or Swim, which is a little card game. And I would say it's kind of in the vein of something like The Crew, because you are going to be working together to ensure that you can achieve a challenge that is set by the game to you as a group. And the way that this one works actually is that they have a dedicated app. It's through Bezier Games as the publisher, and they've made an app, and the app is going to have a timer built in, but it's also going to tell you how to set up each of the challenges. And I think, there is a game that I really enjoy called Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. And it is a game that I love it. I adore it. I think it's a great energizer. It gets people excited. It's great at the start of a game day or in the middle, so that people find their energy again. Like, I really enjoy it. Maggie doesn't like it because she finds it a bit boisterous, I think. Like, a little bit, like, aggressive with the hands and the slapping of
I have
cards.
a thing about any game that has hands rushing into the middle, because this sort of stuff can happen with fingers, and I hate that. And then there's the whole like, oh, you fractured my finger in this friendly game. It's like,
Anyway, I feel like
I also get like with those party games, it's like I enjoy them for the first 2 minutes, and then I start getting bored because it's like I just want to be intellectually stimulated.
Yes.
And they're just like,
whereas I very much care about the people around the table and the mood and whether people are having fun. And this game seems like a game that would be really energizing and easy to understand. And there's a couple of things that I like about it. One, it has a bit of it has a timer, which puts in the tension into a game that I love. So in spite of it being co-op, I do love co-op games if they have some kind of like really intense pressure.
Yeah.
Like we like the
Kitchen
Rush game. Which obviously has all the little mini timers. And because then you feel like you're really competing against the game and there's all this tension.
Yeah.
Kind of like an escape room. There's a timer running and I want to get out of there.
Yeah.
And you know, you're working collaboratively in that as well.
Yeah.
So in this game, you have all of these different challenges, but they stack. And so they start off fairly simple in that, okay, so at the end of this round, everybody has to have a card with the same color and has to play that card into the center of the table. Now, you might not have a card that is the same color as everybody else's. And so what happens while the timer is running is you are trying to trade with each other or swap cards. Or if you can't find it swapping cards, you're going to be drawing from the main deck. And that reminds me of a game that I really enjoyed when I was younger called Billionaire, which is a game I haven't really spoken about much on the channel, but it's just this hilarious game where you're just straight negotiation, swapping chaos. And basically it goes on until someone has the right set of things. Right. And this game reminds me a little bit of that in that you're trading under pressure. The other part that I like about it is once you think you have the right card down, you are going into the dive.
Because it's about synchronized swimming. I don't know if you actually said it at all. Like,
we don't need to know the theme, do we? But doesn't this
You're
just
all
tell
synchronized swimmers, and you've got a team lead, a captain, trying to like gauge everything, but then everyone has to kind of come together and do it, you know, in unison.
And second similarity to Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, which has the narwhal.
Yeah.
That's
probably the only similarity.
No, it's also an energizing, fun game. Yeah. This action I just think is funny to show that you have finished what you think is right. And then, of course, everybody reveals the card in the center and you're going to see as a group at the same time whether you've achieved the objective or not.
Someone messed it up.
Who messed it up?
Someone ruined the whole...
And I imagine there's going to be lots of laughing involved. And I'm happy about it.
And I believe that then what happens is you get penalty, because the whole idea is that you've got this sort of time that is sort of cumulative, and then you get your score based on how many of these... They're almost like mini scenes or modes, levels that you're able to do.
Yeah, so the first... You might be just trying to get the same color, and then the next time, two people might have to have a certain symbol on their card, as well as also having the same color. And so they start to stack and get harder and harder. If you don't pass the challenge the first time, the app automatically adds a little bit of time for you, so you can try and get it the next time with a bit more time. So I don't know, this just looks like a really cute, fun game to me. The only reason that I'm not backing it, because as you can tell I'm pretty excited about it, is that the game itself is $28 US. Shipping to Australia is $20 US.
Right.
So now we're at $48 US for a card game, which is hard to justify. And in the spirit of our New Year's resolution, I am very much trying to be fiscally responsible.
Yes, nice.
So that is our number 3. Check it out if that sounds like a game for you. Sink or swim.
Our number 2 is a game called Skate Summer. So in Skate Summer, we're playing as pro skateboarders. Where we're
just like in real life.
Just like in real life. Where we're going to be trying to get the most points by, doing the best tricks and making sure that we don't bail and that we stay balanced and, generally on the board as opposed to off the board, which is what would most likely happen.
We're going to eat concrete.
Yeah. Not pleasant, not good for your teeth. Yeah.
No. So no, we are not skaters. Never have been.
That's not true. I have been a skater. Not like a major skater, but
I don't know. Is this like
I had skateboards growing up.
Yeah, but is this like you, Maggie the Surfer?
No, I've done a lot more skating than the 2 times I've done surfing.
Even though you have a surfboard.
So this is beside the point. This is
okay. Sorry. My point is that Maggie goes through hobbies, so I'm not quite sure if it was like a one day thing.
As a kid, I never managed to do any sort of tricks aside from just like break. When you just like put it up like that to break. That's as far as I went. So
it was so cool in the 90s, though, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Skateboarding was super
it's done
cool.
It's done a.
I feel like
full
it's coming
comeback.
back. Yeah,
it's all coming. Like for some people, it never went. Like
yes.
There's a lot of actually the filmmaking stuff is from the skateboarding culture of like doing those like amazing shots. Anyways, we digress.
Anyway, This game is all about that skateboarding culture, and it is a beautiful, colourful board.
Oh, love the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's really cool. And you're going to be taking on one of the characters and playing as this character, performing different tricks. And forgive me if I do not know any of the correct terms for skateboarding.
I will not know any of these
but
terms.
What you're going to be doing is playing different types of movements, tricks, whatever it is, in the form of cards onto your player board, and you're going to be trying to keep your balance, which is exactly what I would be trying to do. And so you're going to be playing cards either to the left or right on your player board, and then you're going to be at some point rolling dice that are going to tell you how much further you're leaning to the left or right, which means if you lean too far in one direction, you might ultimately stack it and end up in a bush somewhere. Yeah, exactly. And so what this game is all about, push your luck. So you are trying to negotiate whether you can kind of stack one side of your board left or right to the point where you can push your luck with the dice roll and hope that doesn't happen.
It's like the layer of tricks. It's like, are you going to do one and land it, or are you going to be like, no, I'm still pretty good. Let's try and make it fancier and fancier until inevitably.
And I like that it's all about this. You've got this limit of how much you can take on to the right or left. For me, like the limit would be like one little gust of wind,
like someone whispering something in the distance, and that'd be enough.
Yeah. If it was like if there was like asymmetric player boards and it was the Amy character, it wouldn't even have the left or like you no. Yeah. You stood up. Well done. You should cash that in. Cash it in now. Anyway, and then there's a main player board where you're going to be moving your character around, kind of like this like sandboxy area where you're going to be able to stop and kind of get different upgrades or pick up different
and then there's
elements.
Like the skater locations.
Letters.
So there's the letters that spell skater that they're on different locations, and you're trying to kind of collect that set.
Yeah, and when you get the full word skater, is going to enable you to either upgrade your player board or your character or score you points at the end if you're able to get the full word, which kind of reminds me of video games. You know when you go around in video games and collect the letters? And it would spell a word at the top of the screen. So that gave me a lot of nostalgic feels about video games. But anyway, that is basically this game is push your luck, and it's a race. So the game is going to end when you get to a set number of victory points, and the first person to get there will win. And the first person to get there will win, because I don't think there's any other points that are scored at the end of the game with objectives or anything else. But you can actually set the length of the game using that method. So you just set however many victory points you want the game to be, so you can play a shorter or a longer game. So I really love the concept of this game. It reminds me a little bit of like, a recent push your luck game we played was Sheepy Time.
Oh,
Yeah. And so it's just like we don't have a lot of push your luck games in our collection, but it reminds me a bit of like a similar weight to that in terms of feel. But a really interesting implementation that is super thematic. Like it's just, and even as non-skateboarder, like it's kind of cool the way the tricks work.
I love that you've got your player board is a skateboard, and it's you like obviously the illustrations of the tricks and I love the aesthetic of the board and all the locations. And you can, one of the things that we haven't mentioned is like you can upgrade your tricks so you can get better at them. I'm not sure.
So that they give you more points as well every time you score that type of trick. I really like what Pandasaurus Games have done with the diversity of the characters. Always really appreciate seeing that in games. And I also love that they had a competition to name all of the different characters.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of the character boards, and like one of of them, one of the winning names was Sherry Bomb, which is cool. But Sherry Bomb was born in 2004. And I don't know about you, but I always get this like, you were born in 2004? Like, it's just, I feel so old. I've never felt older than when I see someone that was born in like the 2000s. I'm like, oh, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, that
was
was...
like, shouldn't you be a baby if you were born in...
It's like, how are you skateboarding?
Shouldn't you be 2 years old? This is what it feels like to be old.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway.
When they say 10 years ago, it's like, oh, you mean the 90s? Like, no, that's like 30 years ago.
Yeah, you are really old. Yeah. When you're like really, all of the supermarket music is really relatable.
Yeah. It's like, they're
playing my jam.
Like, oh, no.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That is our number 2. Oh, no, sorry. I should say whether we're backing or not. Oh. We are not backing the game currently, only because for the weight of the game, I feel as though we won't get it to the table as often as I would like. And the game is quite expensive. If you're into it, then of course, judge your own value. But it's $70 for the retail edition and $98 for the deluxe edition, which is kind of at the top end. So for us, we'd have to be getting it to the table a lot. And in this case, I think it's a little bit too light for us. Right. But that is our number 2, Skate Summer. And our number 1 for this fortnight is a game that just scraped it into being assessed for this fortnight because it
launched minutes ago.
It literally just dropped. And that is the game Ostia. And it went all the way to number 1.
It did, yeah.
Ostia is a game coming from a Japanese publishing house and a Japanese designer. And this Japanese designer had the recent Kickstarter that fulfilled, I think, last year, called Aqua Garden. And Aqua Garden was if you remember, it kind of looks like an aquarium and it's got all these beautiful fish meeples, and it was a rondelle. But this one takes place in Italy.
Well, in Rome, ancient Rome
specifically.
Yes. So the port of Ostia, and so you are this enterprising, huge fleet owner who have all these amazing ships that you're going to be able to sail around this circular Mancala place. Ultimately, though, what you want is to be in the most highest regard with the people. So it's not just about how you're hiring out your charter or you're chartering your ships. It's also about the other things, the other improvements that you're going to be able to do to the port or to the city, the buildings, the beautiful wooden buildings that you'll get to build as well.
I love that this game is all about kind of trade and building things, and we love that. I mean, I love the cover of this board game. I just saw it. I was like, it is so beautiful. And Aqua Garden was a beautiful game. This looks equally beautiful in its own way. And I love it's like a very minimalistic board design. Yeah. But my favorite thing is exactly what Maggie said about the Mancala, because in this game, your player board is an individual Mancala. Pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool if you're into mechanics. And
what is a Mancala though?
What is a Mancala?
That's one of the jargony things.
Yeah, totally. So a Mancala is like in this case, it's a circular board made up of different wedges. And in order to get from one wedge to the other, you're going to have to pick up everything that's in that wedge and then drop one element in each step until you've got none left, and therefore that is where you end.
The final one where you go into.
Yeah, that's where your turn ends, and that's the action that you're going to be able to take in this case. And in this case, your Mancala is made up of your fleet of ships. And so if you've got 3 ships in an area, you'll be moving 3 steps forward in the Mancala. And then in your harbour area, there are different actions that you're going to be able to take. And what I find really interesting about this game is there are not resources that look like resources, there are just cubes. And the cubes take on a resource, so they are either wood or something else, depending on where they're sitting on your player board and in which segment of that Mancala they are in. And so before you move your ships, you are going to be generating resources based on the number of ships that are in there. And then you're going to be able to move, and then you take the action based on where you end on that Mancala. And the actions that you can take are some of the things that Maggie said, like you're building buildings. Interestingly, there is this center board as well. So you've got your little puzzle, but then the center board, you can send your ships out, and then they are traveling down each of these different routes. And they can only go in one direction. So once you head down one route, that is it. You've committed. No turning back. The ship is not turning around.
There's no U-turn.
The ship has sailed.
The ship has quite literally
sailed. Quite literally.
And then figuratively.
And where you end up with each of your turns is going to collect you new resources. There's also a bit of order fulfillment in this game by the way of collecting order cards that are going to have different combinations of things that you need to collect in order to get victory points. And so it just seems like one of those pure Euro trading, sailing kind of goodness games that I really love the look of this game. There's not, the thing I don't like about this campaign is there is not a lot of, there's a couple of playthroughs. I was able to work out how the game works just by watching the very few playthroughs that are on the actual campaign itself. But there's not a lot of information being provided. First of all, about the expansions. So there is an option to have a higher level of back in order to get an expansion, but they haven't released any information about the expansion yet. They said they're still working on it. And then there's also a deluxe edition of this game, and they haven't provided like a lot of photos of what the deluxe version looks like either. So it's very difficult to know what level to back currently. And it's not a cheap game, and so of course you want to see that the value is being added for each of those different pledge options. So I'm waiting with bated breath. We haven't backed it yet, but yeah, I certainly will be coming back to it. It was also quite hard to work out whether this game is going to be really light, perhaps in the style of Aqua Garden, which is quite light, or something heavier because it looks like a heavier game in some ways.
Euro-y.
And I read somewhere that the designer is anticipating it being between a 3.1 and a 3.5 on BGG, if that makes any sense to you, because I believe Viticulture is what, like 3.2?
Right.
Just to set that kind of,
but that feels right.
About that. And so I think it's kind of at that mid to heavyweight. And so that makes me more interested in it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the campaign evolves and the updates that they provide. But if that sounds of interest to you, you can also add their other games as well, not just Aqua Garden, but a lot of their back catalogue. So if that sounds of interest to you, check out our number one for this fortnight, Ostia. And that is our top 10, and we have just survived because it's 30 degrees today, Celsius in Australia, and we are in a tiny room with little ventilation. So luckily we got through.
Probably got increasingly more frizzy as time went by.
I think if we were doing our top 15, we would have just like halfway through just passed out. Lucky it's not a live stream, but anyway, we may or may not have had a quick break in between to have some water and stand in front of the air conditioning because it is hot.
It is very hot, yes.
Anyway, wherever you are in the world, hope you're having a wonderful Monday/Tuesday. Enjoy your week, and we will be dropping some more board game reviews this week, and we'll be back with more content soon. But take care, and bye for now.
Bye.